Right, here we go. A little bit to do. Want to put together OpenDaylight SDN controller together with Mininet, which will provide us with a virtual switching environment, which is controlled then by the SDN controller, and then sort of northbound of the SDN controller, we'll have a Cisco application, which is an OpenDaylight OpenFlow Manager app, which will be looking at the flows and the sort of topology and managing those over a REST conf type interface. So let's get up and running. We've got down here another new Ubuntu, clever name that, which is the machine that we're going to be dealing with. So it's the latest sort of release at the present time, so 16.04 and the likes. And let's just open up a terminal. And in fact, I'm going to open up another terminal as well. Just drag that to the side. That's probably okay where it is. We might need a third, but we'll come back and revisit that in a moment. Let's see where we are. I've taken the liberty of downloading a couple of releases. I've got Carbon and I've got Beryllium as representative of the OpenDaylights that I've got. If I went on to Firefox or another suitable browser and I just googled OpenDaylight download, then I would actually find that here we are. Click on that and we've got a multitude of things that we can play with, not least the documentation over here, including the installation guide, user guides, one thing or another. They don't all tend to get updated. So you might find there's commonality between an old release, certainly on the installation guides at the front. Things do change, of course, but just bear that in mind. And then we can download the actual tar files, zip files if you prefer. So I take a tar and then untar that, of course, following the installation guide and beyond, which is what we're going to be doing. So I'll just close that down for the time being, because you can see we've downloaded those. Those are here. You probably down them into your downloads folder, that's fine. And then you'll need to unzip them to a suitable folder. So I've got it in my home directory. You can see here, /home/hooray, hooray of the castle. So there we go. First things first. Let's take that file and let's untar it. So if we do a xvf and then distribution, I'm going to take the Beryllium, which is in the 4 of the number. And that doesn't take very long to complete that sort of exercise. Now there's a variable that I'm particularly interested in, which is the Java home variable. So let's just see if that's set. No, it isn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit. So we're going to edit our bash file. So let's see where he is. Bash rc. There it is. So let's have a look, see what we've got. I'm going to put right at the end of this file, right at the end here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export that variable. So I'm going to export Java home, and I'm going to make that equal to, and it all depends which version you've got, so this will be worth checking probably before you go in here. But as you can see, we've got the path to it, /user/lib, and the Java virtual machine, of course. And then we've got Java, and then the variants that you might have. I've got Java 8, you might have Java 7, depends where you are in the development kit. And we'll put that on, and also, of course, we need to know which type we are as well, 64 or 32-bit. So Control X, yes to that. uname -I will tell you we're 64 bits. And if I was just to quickly have a look at what's in the contents of that file that we were just, that folder that we were just messing around with as such, then what I would actually find is I've got that. So you can see that this is the Java 8 that I chose, which was good. So I'm glad we cleared that up. So putting it in a bash, of course, means that that variable is set every time we sort of boot up now. So let's have a look, see what we've got in terms of, just going back up through the commands. Echo, of course, not set. So we do, of course, need to export that value here and now. So running the same line, of course, and this is where cut and paste usually comes in handy. And /user/lib. Of course, now we're doing it out here, we can cheat, and we can just put the tab key until we get to the end. There we are. That's it. Good. So that's all and dandy, as we would say. So what I can do is just check where I am. I need to move into the distribution itself, so CD into there. So from here we can see that we've got a bin file and so on and so forth, and it's under bin, so working from bin we need to go through to karaf, and that's the runtime environment that will fire up what we need. So if we have a look and see what we've got in terms of features, and I'm looking at the feature list for what's installed. Oops, feature list for what's installed. You can see there's a baseline set of packages which are actually built in there. So this time that you might want to broaden this screen just to see those sort of lining up properly. So there's not a great deal there, certainly no ODL packages and the likes that we're going to need OpenDayLight style. So we need to install those. Now you can do the sort of mother of all installs if you like, but as if there was a break in any one of these, then it would break this chain. So the ones that I really need in here, I need restconf, because I'm going to use restconf as the interface effectively for my manager, my external manager later. I'm working with OpenFlow, so we'll have the OpenFlow plugin. I'll take everything they've got in there. You might be more circumspect about these things. We also need the ODL layer 2 switch. So we could take switch all, couldn't we? Yep. And we also need the ODL MD-SAL. Let's take all. Yeah, and again, you might take some of these away with you, but not all of them. ODL Yang tools. Let's put that in. Dum-dum. Dum-dum. Take the common lot. We'll take ODL DLUX. Now there's a couple of options on this. You could do all, or you could start to sort of select out. So I could take core, I could do ODL DLUX again, and take out node. And these are reflected on ODL as the menu options you'll see on the packages you'll see on the left hand side. And we'll also take DLUX, and I'm going to go for the Yang UI. So there's a couple of options there, and ODL DLUX Yang visualizer, and fingers crossed. So that'll probably take a little while. Layer 2 switch takes a little while always. I think Yang Tools takes a little while as well. So we'll let that sort of run away in the background. Now in the other screen, what we could be doing over here is thinking about other bits and pieces that we need. We'll come back and revisit these in just a second. As you can see, it's just hackling away in the background. And there are a couple of other things that we could do with doing, so to speak. One thing that you might use is Nmap. And if you do Nmap against the local host from time to time, you can see which ports are open. That's of interest. Look, 8181 and 8080 are actually open. 8080 being a HTTP proxy, but 8181 is particularly important sort of post Helium, certainly, probably after Lithium. Memory serves me correct, went from 8080 as the port for OpenDayLight to 8181. And I think that was to draw the distinction between other proxies, web proxies, and OpenDayLight. So that's good. So it looks like that port's open, so we might be able to see something if we web browse to there. Probably not, as it's still doing stuff in the background, so we'll let it do its stuff. But Nmap is always useful just to check that out. And then looking sort of at other things, of course we're going to need Mininet. If I have a look on here, I've got my Mininet environment If you haven't, then you'll need to create that. We've got other videos on that, so have a look for those. So you might want to have a look in Mininet. And in particular, I might go into the examples and might have created some examples. There are some default ones here, but I've created a mesh.py. And if I were to look at that mesh.py, I could cat that, of course, or I could go in and edit it. But let's edit it, and let's see what we've got in terms of here. So what I've actually got inside here, and I'm going to just stretch over the top of that while it's still working in the background. What you can see here is I've got a topology where I've added a controller, and the controller is of type remote controller. I've told it where that remote controller is. That's the actual IP address of the OpenDayLight machine. We'll see that in a moment. I'll just reinforce that. And we can see then that there's a port number to add to that as well. So you have to define that, and we define that when we call this. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. Where else are we? There's an IP address and a second one. That's 2 hosts connected to one of 4 switches, wherever they are. We'll see in a moment in terms of the connectivity. We can see, in fact, here host 1 is connected to switch 1 and host 2 is connected to switch 4. I've got a switch list, and then I've run it through a 4 sort of next routine, if you like, and that's actually to create a mesh of connections between those switches. And then as a result of that, if we go a little bit further down, you'll see, in fact, there it is. So we start the network, yeah, and away we go. If we drop the network, we break this routine, it will actually come back and it'll stop that as well. But you should clean things up afterwards as well. So in terms of calling that, well, I will call that as a Python routine because it's Python that I'll be using. Oh, that looks interesting. The left-hand side is finished, so good. Enough of that diatribe. So you'll need to establish a mesh, or you could use one of the standard topologies, but you'd need to point it to the remote controller. Okay, so which is what's actually being done within mesh. So that looks all good and dandy, as we would say. So let's have a look at other bits. We'll come back to mesh, come back to Mininet and that mesh in a mo. But what we need to do now is we need to install an environment that's going to be suitable for. So I'm going to bring up a third terminal, running our Cisco OpenFlow Manager. So just as things always do, it's gone balmy. Thank you. Do as you're told, not what you want to do. Right, so just see where we are for a moment. We're in the home directory, and again, if we look there, we can see we've got the distribution going down to OpenDayLight. So first things first, there's a couple of elements that we need to get hold of. So the first of those is sudo apt-get install -y, and we're going to bring in npm. Oh, by the way, if you want to see this, if you go onto Tinternet and you go into GitHub and you look at Cisco DevNet and you look for the OpenDaylight OpenFlow app, you can see that it's recorded here, and you can see that it's written up underneath. So you can see it's clearly on the northbound interface where we find the OpenFlow Manager away from the OpenDaylight controller, which is away from the switches that it's managing. And that's where we create the Mininet environment, which then points it back to the remote controller using OpenFlow on the southbound interface, and then using the MD-SAL, so modeling, Yang modeling, where we then see an external interface taking us up through to the OpenFlow Manager, and it's OpenFlow Manager which will then hopefully then see topology and manage flows accordingly. So there's lots to read on that. Okay, and there's a variety of resources out on the internet with regards to this level of installation. This is the set of things that it asks for. We've added a few more, and this is a way that you could start Mininet off to give you a suitable topology, but you then have to point to the machine. Now, if you're on the same machine, of course localhost will work, otherwise you'll need to point off to the to another machine where the OpenDaylight is running. And is a few things about if you need to get grunt working and bits and pieces, happy days, but let's go through that. So if we bring back our Ubuntu machine and as we were just about to, sudo apt get install and npm. Of course, if you haven't done it already, a sudo apt get update would precede this, of course. So that didn't take very long. So let's bring in another one, and in fact what I'm going to do is bring in nodejs. Now nodejs is probably there from other things, but I'm going to bring in legacy. There's an issue I had and this fixed it, of running it up. So I'm just going to use git clone, and of course it's http://github.com. We'll spell that the right way this time. Right, Cisco dev net and OpenDayLight. That's good. And it's OpenFlow app.git. There it is, and here it comes. Again, not taking too long to come in. So if you have a look, yep, it's been added. There it is, OpenDaylight OpenFlow. So we might want to go and have a look inside there. So, oops, wrong one. Come back. All is forgiven. OpenDaylight, thank you. And looking inside there, we can see mentions of grunt, so that's good. And OFM is a directory of interest to us now. So what we need to do, and there's a couple of ways you can do this, but I'm just going to go in into OFM and source and common and config and environmental modules. You could have used sed, of course, to do this operation, but go in and change the base URL. At the moment it's localhost, which might be fine for you, but in my case it's 192.168.1.218, and that's where my controller is. So this is telling it on the northbound interface to go and talk to the controller. Of course we tell the Mininet switches on the southbound interface to talk to the controller. They happen to be on the same IP address. So that should be good. So Control X, yes, and out of there. So that's done. And then the final part of that is this has to be run at the privilege level. So sudo npm install -g grunt CLI. Here it comes. Done. And if that's done, then sudo grunt should start up a web server here. We should already have OpenDaylight, so I'm just going to use my nmap command again. So nmap and localhost over here on the third screen. Yes, it's still there. That's fine. That's good. So that's ready to rock and roll. So we've got OpenDaylight. We think is up and running. Mininet is something that would be of use to us now, remembering where we were. So we're going to do a sudo python mesh.py, and we'll see that start up, and there it goes. Okay, so I'm just going to do a see where everything is. It's all connected, looks like it. Right, fine, good. And I'm going to start off a web server here, sudo grunt. Yep, that's good. And notice the port number. It's on the local host, it's 9000. So on the same server, I've actually got two things running. I've got OpenDaylight running up here, and it says karaf and OSGI stuff. And then I've got another web browser running down here, which is running this. Just squeeze that down a bit further, which is running grunt. So that's actually running the Cisco OpenFlow Manager application. And then I've got Mininet running here with its topology, which is providing the switches from underneath. Good. So if we was to find ourselves a suitable web browser, and if we were to point that web browser to 192.168.1.218, and we was to tell it to go to port 8181 index HTML, this would give us the, it would do if I'd have done that right. That's better. This should actually take us through to the OpenDaylight controller. 218.81.81. Admin and admin, those are both the username and password. So down here we've got topology nodes, Yang UI and Yang visualizer, and we've got the nodes in operation. That's good. So if we go back to our machine here and we use, whilst in Mininet, ping all, good, nothing dropped. So if we go back to our web browser and we do a reload, we should see the topologies increase to include the nodes as well. So if we add to the equation http:// and I could cheat, of course, but why should we? 218.9000. Remember, that's the port number that was associated with, wait for it, there it is. And if we click on the nodes, just wait for them to finish. Don't be too impatient. So just wait for those for a second, just final sort of checks. Let's see if we bring up another window, and if we just do an Nmap against localhost, we should see that port number is up and running as well. And of course, just to see where we are, or even I suppose we could find our IP address, and we can see that we are indeed, when we scroll up, we are. Of course, you have to remember all of these things. When you add in, it brings all of the switches and stuff. Right, okay. ifconfig eth0. And we should be away. Up. We're damned. Let's go and do this instead. Yeah, of course, yes. Remember, with different releases, and we've got newer releases, different numbers. There it is, 192.168.1218. Right, good. That's what we were aiming at all this time. Close that terminal. Go back to the. Oh, wait. And that should come back to us. One thing you should make sure, of course, is that any virtual machines or virtual environment that you set up has sufficient resources in order to run these things, because it's now running effectively 3 servers in one box. Alternatively, spread these out across several boxes. Now, one word of warning whilst we're waiting for things, and in fact we'll probably come back to this. Here we go. Good. It's coming through now. We can start to pick up sort of port statistics, flow stats and a variety of other bits and pieces. And we can start managing flows. We're under flow management here. Look, statistics, host basic view again. So there's a number of things that we can come back with and have a little play with, and this nice, neat interface. With thanks to Cisco, really. There is a word of warning, and the word of warning is that there may be some problems with some of the later releases of OpenDaylight. And some have stepped back to Lithium, so even one before Beryllium, in terms of a suitable release to get this all working. But there we go. That's it. It's up and ready. It's now time to play. Well, maybe not just now, but in the next video.